Oh, hello. From running the original Doom over humble 10 megabit networks using the IPX protocol, coaxial cables and blinking NICs, through the roaring return of the Slayer in Doom The Dark Ages, it's crazy to see how far we've come. But in a way, the core thrill of Doom never changed. Today, we're diving into the vintage side of Doom, setting up the network multiplayer the way it was meant to be played back in 1993.
Let's talk about legacy network technology. I'm the Vintage Collector and these are my stories. Now, if you're curious about how Doom stormed onto the scene back in 1993, I've already told that story in a dedicated video. If you want to explore that, you'll find the link to it in the video description. But today, we're doing something different, we're going hands-on. You're about to see how to make vintage Doom run networked across real 486s. But before diving into the real hardware, let's first explore how this setup works in 86box, an emulator that's also perfect for trying things out if you don't have the vintage gear on hand. Spoiler alert, yes, it works and it's surprisingly close to the real deal. To pull this off, we'll create 3 different virtual machines in 86box, each equipped with an emulated NE2000 network card, and you'll link them using VDE, the Virtual Distributed Ethernet switch. If you're unfamiliar with VDE or want a deeper look at how it works, I've covered the basics in this episode and shown it in action with Windows for Workgroups in another, definitely worth checking out both. And if you're curious about 10-base-2 networking in general or want more historical and technical context, I've also done 2 more episodes that dive deep into the details from the proper cabling, network card configuration, interrupt conflicts and more. So if today's walkthrough feels a bit fast-paced, don't worry, you've got plenty of extra material to explore. In the meantime, I had the VMs all set up and ready to go, so it's time to install Doom. I'll be exploring multiple versions today, since there are quite a few differences between them. I'll try both the original Doom version 1, the shower release of 1.2 and the registered versions 1.666 and 1.9. Fun story, I recently stumbled upon a marketplace auction selling a 90s shower sampler CD with a big, bold warning label about Doom being included. That made me smile because I had the exact same disc in my youth. And yeah, I definitely wasn't supposed to have that one. But then again, I probably wasn't supposed to have Doom either. Still, it was the 90s and nobody asked too many questions back then. With all the different Doom versions copied over, it's time to shift focus to the network side of things. As covered in more detail in my earlier episode on VDE, you'll need to configure each 86box VM to connect to the same VDE socket. That's what links all VMs to a shared virtual switch. For this setup, I'm using an emulated NE2000 NIC. That's a safe bet, and many cards of the era were actually NE2000 compatible. For this demo, it's the easiest to go with NE2000. You'll also need the ODI driver set and the IPX stack, which you can find bundled in this package here. From that one, we'll be using lsl.com, ne2000.com and ipxodi.com along with a net.config file. Now, I haven't covered IPX, the Inter-Network Packet Exchange, in depth on the channel yet. That's something I'll save for a dedicated follow-up episode. But for today, all you need to know is that the net.config file contains the network card settings. The IO address and hardware interrupt defined in there must match the configuration of your NIC, whether emulated or physical. To bring up the IPX stack, just load lsl.com first, then the NE2000 driver, and finally ipxodi.com, which enables the IPX protocol. And that's it. Trying to run Doom immediately threw me into an out-of-memory condition. Well, adding memory managers and loading drivers high definitely helps with that. If you want to learn more about optimizing DOS memory, I've got a few videos on that topic, check those out. So once you've overcome that hurdle, it's time to launch Doom for a network game. While early versions of Doom required you to start a network game from the setup program, starting with version 1.2, a separate utility called IPX Setup was included and it evolved with later releases. Of course, you can also launch a network game directly via doom.exe using command line arguments, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. Once the game is running, the two Space Marines drop into the same map, ready for some action, whether you're teaming up in cooperative mode or going head to head in a deathmatch. Now, playing against myself doesn't make too much sense, but what I was really after was trying out Doom with 100° 3 monitors set up. You can simulate this using 86box, though it runs terribly slow and really brought my Mac to its knees. The perspective is also skewed and not particularly useful. So while it's a fun proof of concept, it's not super practical. I think my next attempt will be using real hardware. It's worth noting that, despite what the Doom FAQ says, the multi-monitor feature doesn't seem to work in any version of Doom beyond 1.1. So I'll be going with the original Doom 1.0 release, and for that I'm also recreating some floppy disks to perform the setup as if it were 1993, including the call to distribute it like crazy. Of course, this is the shareware copy and not the full release. Back in the 90s, it was very common to distribute games as so-called shareware, which usually included a fully playable segment of the game, at the example of Doom, the first of 3 episodes, each of which consisting of 9 levels. For my setup, I'm using a trio of compact Presario all-in-one machines. Each one features a 486 CPU, the center one runs on a 486 DX266, the right hand one on a 486 SX266 and the left hand one on a 486 SX33. And if you're wondering why 2 of those machines are sporting TFT flat panels instead of CRTs, it's because these machines arrived with me in shredded condition. I went to great lengths to restore them, but sometimes a flat panel is just the easier route. All 3 machines are equipped with network cards, which I've connected via 10BASE-T and 10BASE-2 through this hub using both STP and coax cabling.
Technically, it's RG58 coaxial cables with BNCT connectors and 50 ohm terminators on both ends. You did terminate it, right?
Well, on the hub you can use the built-in terminator toggle and connect the cable directly, without using an extra T-piece and terminator. But yes. One machine was particularly stubborn, requiring me to run through its setup program to get the NIC recognized. In that case, I had to dig up the drivers for an obscure Magitronic EC2000 Plus card, which I finally found here. I'll also be updating my DOS-based TCP/IP diagnostic floppies as featured in this video to include drivers for that card. With everything set up, I'm finally ready to launch Doom for a 3-player network game. Now, Doom quickly gained a reputation for overloading networks, especially in its initial release.
That's because early Doom used broadcast packets. It totally swamped local subnets and sysadmins hated it.
The network code was later optimized, but by then many sysadmins had already banned Doom outright. As mentioned earlier, you don't need to use setup.exe or IPX setup.exe. You can launch a network game directly from the command line. For running a 3-monitor setup, you'll need to use the -devparm and the -net parameters. Pass -net3 to indicate 3 players and use -left or -right on the corresponding machines. Well, now it can't open the network socket. Seems like that's just part of the deal when running the original 1.0 release. Maybe that early network code wasn't all that stable yet. Fortunately, you don't necessarily have to reboot. Unloading the IPX stack can often be enough to recover and try again. Yay! I even managed to get it up and running, more or less at the same time on all 3 machines. And while it does work, it seems to be a bit choppy, especially in larger map areas. Still better than in 86 box, but not a lot. I need to investigate that further. Since I didn't notice it in pure multiplayer tests, I'm guessing the 33 MHz 486 is holding things back, potentially adding latency and slowing down the faster machines.
But hey, it works, at least when reducing the screen size on the slowest machine to the size of a stamp. And believe it or not, I had never tried this setup before, not back when Doom was current and not at any later point in time of my life until today. I'll definitely explore whether I can squeeze out better performance, in particular from that slowest machine, like upgrading the CPU to DX2, which would probably already do the trick. But unfortunately, I don't have a spare CPU at hand right now. But how about you? Were you secretly playing Doom on your campus network behind the admin's back? Or have you ever tried or even seen the legendary 180° 3 monitor setup in action? Let me know your Doom backstory in the comments below. And if you enjoy these deep dives into vintage tech and want to help keep them coming, consider supporting the channel with a paid subscription. It really helps me putting the time and effort into stories like this one, and there's more cool stuff on the way. I'm the Vintage Collector, and this was my story for today. Thanks for watching, and see you again next Sunday.